evening, everybody. Welcome to Ed America TV. My name is Hasna, one of the guests here in Ed America. For those of you who just joining us for the first time, Ed America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn about the United States. We have temporarily moved to a digital platform so you can enjoy our events from the comfort of your own home. On this event, we'll be having the future of us, artificial intelligence is changing our lives. But before we begin, we have a social media quiz for the audience. And the question for today is, what was the first artificial intelligence program? Is it Azure, Cortana, Logic Theories, or H2O AI? You might type in your answer at any time during the session. The lucky one who can guess the answer correctly will get a live shout out from us by the end of this event. Don't forget to do that because we really like to get everyone actively involved in this event. After done that, don't forget to take a selfie and take it America's Instagram account. And now, without further ado, allow me to invite our moderator for today's session. From Sampurna University, the head of Computer Science Program, Dr. M. Agni Chaturbakti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Hasna. Okay, so first of all, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to be your moderator for the talk tonight. So first, I would like to introduce the speakers that we have today. Let me introduce them one by one here. The first speaker is Dr. Alexander Champlin. He's a senior analyst of esports research at Nico Partners. He's an esports analyst specializing in market trends and insight in Asia. However, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to join us live tonight, so we will play his presentation instead. And then the second presenter, we have Muhammad Rifki Handoko Putra. He's an analyst specializing in AI and data at Deloitte Consulting. He advises companies on how to best use AI and data analytics. Then we have the third speaker, which is Mbak Shana Budiharjo. She's a product manager at Digital Banking Genius. She helped digitize banking products, making banking products accessible to more than 30% of Indonesians. She also started a women's empowerment community named Sequel in 2019. And our last speaker is Mas Maliaki Agung Wijaya. He's a co-founder and founding engineer at Tannix. He leads a company that is building a machine learning software engineering system. So please, round of applause for our speakers tonight. And I think we can start with the first presentation by Dr. Alexander Champlin, I believe. So please, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Champlin. I'm a senior analyst of esports from the research firm Nico Partners. I'm speaking today about the intersection of AI and esports with a focus on Asia, Indonesia, and the relationship to the US esports market. Briefly, a bit about Nico Partners. We are a market research and consulting firm covering the video games, esports, and streaming industries in Asia specifically. And we are celebrating our 20th year this year. You can follow us on Twitter at Nico China. You can follow Daniel Ahmad, who is a prolific tweeter at Jugex. And then we suggest you sign up for our free weekly newsletter if the Asia games market is of any interest to you. And of course, read our blog, nicopartners.com/blog. So first, a bit about the esports ecosystem. This is kind of a quick rundown of how money flows through the esports ecosystem. The three sort of major forces or factors to consider in the esports space are, of course, game publishers, esports events, and esports teams and orgs. And sponsors and fans engage with all three of these. And what I'll address at the end of the talk today is the ways that AI, artificial intelligence, or machine learning begin to affect these different parts of the industry. But first, and what I'd like to focus on in the first half of this talk is the esports ecosystem more broadly, how it works, what the sort of business opportunities are in Asia and Indonesia specifically, and how they relate to the US. And so I'll begin kind of by briefly giving you an overview of esports in the US, and indicating how this compares to esports in Asia and Indonesia. Of course, the West is famous for some of the most notable esports teams and tournaments, and some of the most notable platforms. But what we find is that, in terms of the broader esports ecosystem, the US and the West broadly lag behind esports in Asia. They focus primarily on PC games. There's really slow growing interest in mobile and console esports. Viewership is concentrated on Twitch and YouTube, but esports communities are relatively fractured and really kind of exist online primarily. There's been a struggle to kind of introduce, small scale and participatory esports at a level that kind of, supports the broader ecosystem. And this isn't the case in Asia, where we see a really healthy ecosystem from the small scale up through large-scale international tournaments. The U.S. also isn't really home to notable esports governments or government organizations or organizations really kind of successfully promoting the intersection of esports and sports, or esports as an industry. And as a result, there's fewer national incentives or pipelines for esports as well. That's not to say that the esports ecosystem in the U.S. is inferior. Quite to the contrary, the U.S. and the West has produced some of the most notable and most successful esports teams and esports organizations. According to Forbes 2020 ranking of esports teams, the most valuable esports teams are based in the U.S. And what we're seeing is these teams are recognizing that the esports industry is really kind of global, and they too are beginning to kind of turn their attention to Asia, and with that, kind of turning their attention to the growing importance of mobile esports. So when we look at the esports trends in the U.S., many of the top games are globally identifiable titles: League of Legends, Fortnite, CS:GO, Valorant, Dota. But you'll note these are primarily PC games, and really kind of limited to the genre of MOBAs and shooters. So while Western esports fans are dedicated, they're really a small portion of the gaming population. They're this sort of niche of PC gamers who are really kind of fascinated in a specific title, high-level competition around specific PC titles. And when we look at the rest of the world, and we look at Asia specifically, that's a fairly limited scope. What we see is that that mobile is a very big part of the esports ecosystem, and what this means is that Asia is a more diverse esports industry with a lot more routes to entering the esports space, a lot more points of opportunity. And so that's what I'd kind of like to lay out in this next portion of the presentation. All 5 of the top most viewed esports titles in Asia, mobile esports titles in Asia, are developed in Asia. So what we're seeing is Asia kind of emerge as not just a major market for consuming esports, but really sort of a major esports market from the production of esports titles to the sort of development of esports businesses and esports fandom. And what this means more broadly is that Asia is really kind of leading the globe in what esports audiences can do, and and the sort of the value of esports viewership. In 2021, the most viewed esports event was the Free Fire World Series. This is one of the first years that a game that wasn't League of Legends kind of took the top spot. And what this signifies is that mobile esports and titles that are popular in Asia are really kind of driving the esports ecosystem globally. And so this is a great time to be in Asia, to be in Southeast Asia specifically. And there's sort of an ease of entering the market, and then a lot of opportunity there. Other notable titles from Asia include Mobile Legends Bang Bang and PUBG Mobile. And these compete against popular Western titles, and they do quite well. So Asia in 2020 generated a little over $500 million in esports revenue, and this was generated by 618 million esports viewers. So a huge audience. We can break this down further. That $543 million in esports revenue that was generated in Asia in 2020, that accounts for a little more than half of the total global esports revenue, which we estimated about $1 billion. We saw viewership in 2020 climb by 20%, and we saw the number of players climb by almost 7.5%. So very significant growth. What we found in 2020 and 2021 was that, initially the COVID-19 lockdown hurt the tournament ecosystem, but boosted the esports viewership and live streaming ecosystems. And, what players, what fans, and what sponsors found was that, esports was one of the few games kind of left in the sports media market that could pivot to online only play rather quickly and continue to produce content. And so, what started as a kind of downturn for esports became really sort of a keystone moment, a moment where esports kind of set itself apart and attracted a lot of viewers and a lot of sponsors. And we find that 60% of the audience in Asia is drawn to esports. And what this means is that esports is really a significant predictor of trends in the game space, and that Southeast Asia is going to continue to be kind of a leader in the esports market going forward. And a big part of this is mobile esports. This is somewhere that that Asia really kind of leads the rest of the world. And, the COVID-19 pandemic really kind of served to improve mobile's market share, because of inexpensive smartphones, because of improvements to mobile broadband, the general sort of ease of access of mobile titles, and the integration of mobile into, the app ecosystem on your phone makes mobile esports really sort of a potent combination. We find that battle royale titles on mobile perform quite strongly in addition to the popularity of mobile titles. And broadly, mobile just has lower barriers to entry and higher install rates. So you just have more players potentially. And that's really great for mobile. Asia also has a fantastic live streaming ecosystem. We note that Twitch and YouTube kind of lead esports in the West, but in Asia, we see a lot of platform diversity. This is where esports content circulates. And what this means is that you have platforms competing for viewers and competing over esports content. And so the value of these esports licenses and esports content really gets sort of shaken out. And that's fantastic for the esports industry. You have a lot of different platforms kind of clamoring for esports content and creates a lot of opportunities. So of course, China is the most sort of diverse single market for live streaming, but SEA as a region is home to even more platforms. And what this means is more viewers and more opportunity. So if we think about esports in Southeast Asia specifically, about 11.5% of the total sort of regional esports value generated in Asia is generated in Southeast Asia specifically. COVID-19 interrupted the growth that we were seeing in esports in Southeast Asia, but what we're seeing in 2021 and 2022 is that this growth has returned. And it's really kind of in in favor of mobile esports specifically. There's a couple of things that we're looking forward to broadly in Southeast Asia. The SEA Games in 2019 really kind of helped put esports on the map. We're looking forward to esports included in the 2022 SEA Games, as well as the 2022 Asian Games and the 2022 Commonwealth Games. All of these are bringing national esports into the sort of the world of sports more broadly and putting them on the global stage. And so we're seeing a lot of investment and a lot of excitement around esports across the region as a result of this. We're also seeing major international esports tournaments return to Asia. Notably, the One Esports Singapore Major in 2021 was the first Dota 2 major to take place since the pandemic. And it took place in Southeast Asia, which was sort of a verification of the importance of Southeast Asia for the esports ecosystem. One of the things that sets Southeast Asia apart from the rest of the world is the title diversity that we see among esports games in Southeast Asia. And so what this means is that really popular Western titles like League of Legends or CS:GO compete kind of head-to-head against very popular regional titles like Free Fire, PUBG Mobile, or Arena of Valor. And so, this creates a lot more opportunity in the esports space and a lot more opportunity for teams, organizations, and brands to kind of find their niche in the esports market. If we think about Indonesia specifically, Indonesia is a fantastic market for esports. There are 58 million PC gamers predicted by 2025 and 138 million mobile gamers predicted by 2025. Mobile is more than double the size of the PC games market, and it's growing rather quickly. We're also seeing that smartphones are really kind of driving gaming across Southeast Asia and are deeply integrated into the esports ecosystem. Of course, console and PC lag behind, but this is a very exciting space to explore the potential of the mobile esports market. Indonesia is the largest esports market in Southeast Asia. It is home to 121 million mobile gamers currently and 53.4 million PC gamers currently. Like the rest of the region, it's a mobile-first games market. Free Fire, Mobile Legends, and PUBG Mobile are the leading titles in Indonesia. There's a strong correlation between esports trends and overall gaming trends. So being in the esports space gives you a very strong connection to the game space more broadly. And we're seeing a lot of national support for esports coming out of Indonesia, which creates a favorable market. The leading titles in Indonesia for PC were, of course, relatively popular global esports titles. And the vast majority of PC tournaments that included Indonesia were international tournaments. So there's a really sort of strong presence, for Indonesian esports in the sort of the global esports space. At the same time, there's a really strong local presence, and we're seeing this kind of develop around mobile esports with local titles, locally popular titles like Mobile Legends and Free Fire, PUBG Mobile, kind of leading the mobile ecosystem. And we're seeing a lot more local tournaments, so tournaments that take place just in Indonesia, kind of leading the mobile space. So there's a lot of opportunity at the sort of national level, and there's a lot of opportunity at the international level, all sort of through the Indonesian market. So if we're thinking about business opportunities in esports in Indonesia, there's a couple of things we'd like to note. We noted that there were twice as many esports events taking place in Indonesia in 2021 compared to 2020. So growth continues to be strong, and we're seeing this continue through 2022. An increase in esports activity is driven by several factors. Of course, esports branded partnerships is a big part of the esports ecosystem. There's a large and growing number of esports-focused businesses, both B2B and B2C. We're seeing increasing investment in Southeast Asia specifically from game publishers. Riot Games, of course, has made a big push behind Valorant and Wild Rift. and it's creating a lot of competition in the esports space. So it's a great time to be in the market. Of course, 5G rollout and a growing number of online tournament platforms is making esports more accessible. There's a growing regional excitement about esports and national interest in esports as a result of these kind of global sporting competitions that include esports as a medal event. And then, of course, no major regulatory obstacles. In fact, Indonesia is fairly favorable when it comes to gaming and esports. So it's a really sort of fantastic market to look at entering the esports space. So finally, I'd like to think briefly about where AI and esports, so how these sort of opportunities that we've already talked about around esports integrate with developments in artificial intelligence. Of course, a lot of these developments are still nascent, but we're seeing some kind of clear-cut use cases emerge. One example is in esports coaching. There are consumer applications that use AI and machine learning to provide coaching and game analysis to players. The same is possible at a professional level with teams using AI for game predictions, strategy, and to improve coaching. You can sort of make better decisions about what your players should be doing if you understand how games tend to play out. And AI is a great tool for this. Of course, AI-driven bots are already a part of many esports titles, and the future of this application poses both opportunities and potential challenges. Bots can serve as training partners for players, but AI bots used nefariously can also threaten the integrity of competitive games, as bots for cheating or farming become more prevalent and harder to detect. On the flip side of this, we're seeing machine learning used to better detect these nefarious bots or players using cheats or players sort of acting unscrupulously in game chats and in game communities. So there's a potential for AI to be used to make these game spaces more fair, more competitive, and more safe for players, and ultimately more fun as a result. So that's sort of thinking about how AI integrates into esports play, but there's also some really interesting business implications of artificial intelligence in the esports space. One practical application is using AI to improve sports betting, set odds, and really kind of grow the esports betting ecosystem. Likewise, AI can be used to deliver targeted advertisements to players who are watching esports, who are engaging with live streaming platforms, and even to players who are participating in small-scale online participatory esports competitions. You can kind of begin to tailor the experience and tailor the messaging for a specific user or a specific group of users. And of course, AI can begin to customize user experiences in other ways, from improving matchmaking to improving game recommendations, even at the level of game design and procedural content generation. So there's a lot of kind of exciting things that AI might do for, not just the sort of the future of esports, but the future of esports games and the future of esports business. And finally, I've listed a few existing AI applications in esports that you might be interested in investigating after this presentation. Some sort of notable instances of popular esports players competing against really fantastic AI-driven bots. So the OpenAI and DeepMind AlphaStar are two sort of examples of AI bots that challenged the sort of leading esports players. Of course, there's examples of bot and cheat detection from AnyBrain. There's Senpai GG, an AI coaching platform. And then there's an example of AI being used to improve networking for an esports entertainment center. So, there's a lot of potential applications, and I'm sure there's many more than we've listed here. But, it just kind of gives you a taste of where these opportunities are developing and, and why Southeast Asia is a really exciting place to explore these possibilities. So with that, I'd like to thank you. You can find out more about Nico Partners at our website, nicopartners.com. Check out our blog, check out our free reports, and of course, follow us on Twitter and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. I would like to thank you again for inviting us to participate in this webinar, and I look forward to receiving any feedback or questions from you via email. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the playing the video. Very nice presentation. Yeah. Unfortunately, Dr. Champlin is not here. I actually want to also ask some question myself. But let's keep all the questions and discussion later, yeah, for later. So we will continue with the second presenter, Mas Rifki Handoko. So please, the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak Dr. Rafni. Wait, let me share my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible now. Okay, thank you. So, good evening, everyone. Selamat malam. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rifki. Currently working as an analyst for a consulting firm and working on robotic process automation, which is part of AI, and you could say it's an intelligent automation. Okay, so what we will be covering today is only two things. So I should be quicker. So yeah, only what is and why. So as simple as that, because I want to make this short and not too complex to understand. So first questions, what is RPA? Robotic process automation, of course, but it is a software to emulate or mimics human action by interacting with digital system. For example, you are using a software and you are clicking on multiple things or inserting data, which will be not replaced, but will be did by the robot. Yeah, so the softwares that use RPA or the software or the RPA software, yeah, three main RPA software. The first one is the UiPath, the one who holds the most market share right now for RPA markets. The second was Automation Anywhere, and the third was Blue Prism. We'll not get into much about this software. You could search it on your own, but I will talk about the technology more behind RPA. And what I meant here by humans action and actually the business process. So yeah, for example, we are doing finance things where you need to insert multiple data from multiple database. You could use RPA to replace the repetitive activity that you are doing in your current job desk. To make it simpler, I'll put some image here. For example, you are a user, probably could call him James. So James needs to find custom. James needs to make transaction receipt using three kind of data. The first one was customer transaction. The second one was customer data, taking data from customer database, and the third one was taking from the transaction database. Imagine that you have three kinds of databases that you need to combine, that you need to take, and you need to create or generate another receipt, and making sure that all data are valid and as efficient as possible. So what should James do is to replace him by RPA. So we measure RPA by FTE or full-time equivalent, meaning that this robot will replace a person hours by counting, like we have 8 hours a day, like 8 hours working day full time. It will replace how much of the time that they could, or James could replace his main job to do something else. So for example, in this chart that I draw, that the RPA is a 0.9 FTE, and what will James do is only need to validate the receipt. James doesn't need to find the transaction and search the database, get the data, copy, paste everything. James doesn't need to do that. James just need to do the transaction receipt and analyze if there is something wrong with the receipt, or how many receipts or how many transactions are in a day. That's the only thing that needs James do. So RPA here is not like a kind of data analytics machine or prediction machine. It just mimics what James are doing before and replace it with a robot that will run automatically. So if you ask me, like, what is RPA? Is it a robot or not? I will say yes, it is a virtual robot because it's not existent. They doesn't have hands. They doesn't have feet there. It's only like software that will run on your digital system. And this robot will not will could it could run with humans like parallelly, but on some cases, the best case one is to run without human intervention. So it will run end-to-end automatically. And probably the most highlighted questions that I got about talking of RPA, is it considered an artificial intelligence? In my workplace, it's considered as intelligent automation because it's automating things and it is intelligence, of course. But if you want to consider it an I will say it depends on the robot capability. Like some robot will be much simpler as James cases, but I would say that some robot will have, like usually we have complexer, more complex cases in terms of robot capability, especially including chatbot, which the input could be different from each interactions, document processing, image recognition, which needs OCR and ICR engine, and it's a different holdings when we are talking about different input, different templates. It needs another capability that's get closer to AI, as the robot do not have any analytics or prediction capability. Yeah, I would just say it close to AI, almost to be an AI, but it is part of AI. So next questions that I will talk about, why IRPA? So for business, I highlighted four four things that will benefit the business. But I will say there could be hundreds of benefits or profits when you are talking about RPA or implementing RPA in your business. The first one I would like to talk is about applicability and the validity. When you talk about applicability, meaning that all business sectors, if you are in finance, accounting, or if you are just HR, yeah, everything, including you are talking like software as big as SAP, as your SQL database, it could be integrated or implemented with RPA. So every part of business could be covered by RPA. We are not talking about the business that in physical things, for example, storage handling. Of course, the robot could not move one storage to another, but it could manage the transactions. It could save the history of the storage. Yeah. And the second one is validity. As an end-to-end automation is covered by the robot, meaning that humans' interaction will be minimalized and your data will be very valid, as the data is maintained in a closed environment and kept by the robot without any changing, without any interactions between one data to another or any machine to another. So first is applicable and it's very valid of the data. The second part or the third one is the payback period and the high return of investment. Probably you know Forrester, one of the leading survey organization. But Forrester said that organization-wide RPA implementation could be repaid less than 12 months, with return on than 250% within 3 years. So what you paid will be returned in less than 1 year, and you need to pay for license every year. But the return will get over 2 times of your investment in under 3 years, including the license, including the maintenance, including repair, possibility of errors, right? They should always be there when you are talking about AI or technology implementation. And including all of those things, the return is 2 times or 2.5 times only under 3 years, which is quite huge when you are talking about technology implementation, especially a software. When we are talking about software, this is very huge. And the last thing about RPA for you humans or programmers or soon to be RPA developers, there are 4 things that I would like to highlight. First one is the low code programming, open to all background, and the growth and demand of RPA currently in this decade, I could say it's very high. So talking about low code programming, probably some of you already have like coding backgrounds. You will talk about C, C#, C++, VB, Python. Yeah, there are lots of programming language. In the software that I use, UiPath, or you could say Automation Intelligence, Automation Anywhere, or UI Blue Prism, all of those are using low code programming, meaning it's a drag and drop programming. You just need to drag a module, put it in the main screen, and yeah, it will work. And probably you need to learn some VB or C sharp as to a more complex logic, yeah, to be provided. For example, you need to do like if else, and if you need another command, right, for if. Yeah, it's in VB or C sharp, but the basic modules, the if else while and etc., or including read from Excel, write to Excel, it's all a drag and drop modules. So it will be easy for someone who is not a STEM background to learn RPA. Yeah, it's very simple. And in RPA, there are a lot of lines, yeah, business lines. For example, you could be the analysis. You could be the analyst or the assessment team, which you could only search for a business process, and you would test it if it could be implemented by RPA or not, which you don't need any coding background at all. You just need to know whether this business process is actually implementable by RPA or not. Or you could be the developer, like me, for example. Yeah, you could just code, and it's a very easy coding, low code programming. Yeah, what could you ask for more? So yeah, I would like to talk about the high growth, high demand. Probably the presentation is not that big. Let me zoom in for 1 second. So this research was from President's Research, and it's quite new actually, this year actually, and you could see the growth is very high, around like 1 billion US billion a year. It's huge growth, and obviously, if there is a high growth in business terms, there will be a high demand for developers or for the assessment team to work in RPA. So yeah, you could be probably one of the team. So this is from President's Research, and this is global. Yeah. I would like to talk probably a little bit more about another chart, which is one right here. It's from Maximize Market Research, and you could see that probably it's also growing, but not that significant as the previous chart. But they have different regions that I should mention. That Asia Pacific is one of the highest right now. North America was the highest. Asia Pacific was the second highest. And in Asia Pacific, Southeast Asia was the highest. And the highest growth in Southeast Asia was actually Indonesia. So the demand for RPA in Indonesia currently is quite high. You could be part of any team, probably in banking, in finance service, in tax, insurance, any part of business sectors that handle a lot of data, a lot of transactions. RPA is being implemented right here, right now. So don't miss the bus. Join RPA right now if you have the capability. And yeah, that's all actually from me. I will not take your time more. And thank you for listening to me. And if you want to connect with me, you could connect me in LinkedIn. Thank you. So back to Pak Agni.
Thank you, Mas Rizky. Okay, interesting presentation. And actually, we at Sampurna University, actually, we partnered with one of the player actually with UiPath.
Same, Pak.
Okay. So again, let's keep the question and the discussion for later, yeah. So we'll continue with our next presenter, which is Mbak Shana. So please, Mbak Shana, the time is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Agni.
Mbak Shana. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Agni. Oke, selamat malam semua. Jadi tadi kita udah sempat lihat presentasi mengenai e-sport transformation dan juga RPA. Dari sisi aku pengen share sedikit the perspective of AI implementation for the future of banking. Ada 3 agenda yang pengen aku share. Yang pertama menurut aku penting untuk melihat the future, we need to understand the current landscape. Apakah kita ready to embrace AI in the future, dan bagaimana sih implikasi AI for the future of banking. Oke, first of all, aku mau share mengenai the banking landscape in Indonesia, mengenai digitalization journey di perbankan. Yang pertama itu, kita lumayan, mungkin cukup lama waktu yang dibutuhin sampai the first ATM introduced di Indonesia, yaitu di tahun 1986. Kemudian in the 20s, kita ngelihat rapid growth banget mengenai perkembangan cabang-cabang perbankan, especially di daerah-daerah. Dan mungkin yang lucu dan interesting story itu, aku kan originally aslinya dari Pontianak. Nah di Pontianak itu ketika majority of us lulus dari kuliah ataupun dari SMA, salah satu pekerjaan yang paling disukai dan diminati itu adalah menjadi karyawan di perbankan, karena they have clear remuneration program, clear career path, dan juga kerja di bank itu karena growth-nya cepat, jadi itu sangat atraktif buat orang-orang di daerah. Nah, tapi the landscape changing ketika kita masuk di tahun 2016, di mana the first digital bank di Indonesia itu diintroduce, yaitu Genius. Tapi nggak sampai tahun 2018-2019 kita benar-benar melihat kalau di industri digital banking ini growth rapidly dan menjadi suatu industri atau sektor yang menarik buat semua orang. Apalagi di-accelerate di saat pandemi ini di tahun 2019 akhir 2020 hingga sekarang, banyak banget perusahaan baik itu existing conventional bank yang berusaha untuk mentransformasi perbankan konvensional yang menjadi digital maupun non financial services seperti startup. Yang sebenarnya mereka targetkan atau mereka fokuskan itu adalah mereka membuat suatu ekosistem. Aku punya beberapa contohnya. Yang pertama misalnya Bank Jago. Jadi Bank Jago ini kan di-acquire dari Bank Artos. Kemudian Bank Jago ini menjadi implemented ekosistem atau back-end payment dan all transactional base dari Gojek. Kemudian we have Bank yang backing atau ekosistem yang disupport adalah Shopee. Dan we have Bukalapak dan juga Coinworks yang fokus ke BaaS, Banking as a Service, untuk accelerate entrance mereka ke industri atau perbankan digital. Jadi mereka semua ini ingin membuat suatu ekosistem, karena ekosistem ini fokusnya adalah integrated yang ingin dicapai. Jadi customer life cycle-nya mulai dari awareness, mereka mencari barang atau service, hingga mereka considerate purchase, payment, even post-purchase-nya itu semua terjadi di dalam platform mereka. Kita bisa ngebayangin berapa banyak data, berapa banyak insight dan revenue yang di-generate kalau suatu company itu bisa offering end-to-end dan memenuhi all the customer demands gitu. Jadi all customer life cycle-nya itu happening di dalam platform dia. Bahkan mereka nggak cuma sebagai payment ya. Kalau misalnya teman-teman tahu, Bank Jago itu also offering lending produknya kepada driver-driver Gojek dan juga same as Shopee dan juga Bukalapak. Makanya kita bisa melihat banyak sekali sekarang startup, even fintech yang mengarah ke arah situ. Jadi pertanyaan selanjutnya kan tentu are we ready to embrace AI? Menurut aku sebenarnya AI itu udah ada dalam roadmap untuk seluruh perbankan yang ada saat ini. Tapi the problem is karena kita baru mulai tren untuk digitalisasi perbankan ini baru happening dalam beberapa tahun terakhir. Kita tuh sebenarnya masih fokus untuk mendigitalisasi konvensional produk bank yang sebenarnya cukup banyak. Of course, initially kalau teman-teman lihat digital banking itu pasti offernya dari saving account, and then mereka mulai ngembangin atau melengkapi dengan transactional, kemudian payment, dan at the end mereka mulai masuk ke lending dan investment. Nah, tapi ini masih sangat minim banget untuk perbankan-perbankan yang menawarkan quite complete banking experience. Jadi sebenarnya saat ini AI is already in our map atau di map dari perbankan-perbankan digital, tapi sebenarnya kita belum melihat ini sebagai suatu prioritas atau sesuatu yang bisa jadi game changing in the future. Dan sebenarnya kalau tadi kita ngebahas dari perspektif komersial atau dari perspektif company, kalau kita lihat dari social issue-nya, sebenarnya ngebahas mengenai digitalisasi perbankan juga masih banyak problems yang ada. Misalnya di Indonesia, 1/4 populasi di Indonesia itu remains unbanked. Ini kita ngomong unbanked adalah orang yang benar-benar nggak punya akses terhadap perbankan. Not to mention masih ada underbanked, orang-orang yang punya basic product banking, tapi mereka nggak tahu atau mereka kurang pengetahuan produk ini tuh tujuannya untuk apa dan fungsinya untuk apa. Dan juga di sini kita lihat ada gender parity, di mana most loans dan juga deposit yang ada saat ini tuh dimiliki oleh pria. Dan mungkin teman-teman kalau punya kartu kredit atau pernah apply KPR, pasti tahu kalau misalnya di credit underwriting di Indonesia itu masih cukup sulit, di mana kalau misalnya sudah menikah kreditnya harus disetujui oleh suaminya juga. Jadi memang dari policy ya cukup cukup mempengaruhi ketidaksetaraan financial literacy ini. Jadi sebenarnya untuk embracing AI, kita masih punya masalah nih di digital inequality, low financial literacy, dan low data literacy. Tapi sebenarnya kalau kita lihat how AI works dan how AI can be game changer, semua ini tuh bisa dibantu accelerate di close the parity menjadi lebih menjadi bankable masyarakatnya. Dan how ini aku bagi menjadi dua, dari sisi underwriting dan juga transaction and payment. Karena menurut aku underwriting itu menjadi sangat fundamental buat masyarakat, especially those yang unbanked dan juga underbanked. Karena underwriting proses itu kan bagaimana kita memproses atau menganalisa aplikasi baik itu saving ataupun lending produk yang diajukan oleh masyarakat. Nah sayangnya perbankan ini karena regulasi dan juga karena risk appetite yang berbeda, banyak perbankan yang masih menghindari masyarakat yang datanya kurang lengkap di SLIC atau di credit bureau. SLIC itu sistem informasi di mana seluruh credit information kayak tenor kita berapa, kredit limitnya berapa, itu ada di sistemnya Bank Indonesia. Nah kalau misalnya aku nggak pernah punya history di kredit bureau ini, maka kemungkinan aku di-approve untuk lending produk itu sangat minim karena bank tercenderung risk adverse for those yang nggak punya history peminjaman kreditnya. Jadi masyarakat, especially ibu rumah tangga yang mungkin mau mengajukan pinjaman untuk bisa mulai usaha kecil-kecilan atau mengembangkan home industry-nya itu terhambat. Jadi sebenarnya hal ini bisa kita solve dengan AI. How? Dengan 3 komponen ini. Kita bisa open banking, facial recognition underwriting, dan juga gimana kita bisa incorporate non-bureau data. Yang pertama dari open banking ini, open banking mungkin termsnya dulu masih nggak terlalu umum ya di Indonesia, tapi I see sekarang kita mulai open dan mulai mencari cara gimana kita bisa masukin open banking ke underwriting proses untuk di industri perbankan. Di open banking ini konsepnya adalah bahwa data kita itu merupakan authority kita. Jadi kalau misalnya kita memberikan izin untuk kepada bank A misalnya agar mereka bisa mengakses data kita di bank lain, bank B, C, dan D, dan all of this bank harus saling opening their data terhadap customer saya gitu. Nah dengan begini kalau misalnya kita mau melakukan pinjaman di bank B misalnya karena mereka punya offering bunga yang lebih cocok dengan financial ability kita, dan juga mereka misalnya offering entrepreneurial coaching yang tidak ditawarin oleh bank lain, then we will go with this bank kan. Tapi kita nggak punya data history transaksi di sini. Nah dengan open banking bank lain ini bisa saling melihat data kita dan mereka bisa analyze dari data-data perbankan kita, dari behavior transaksi kita untuk memutuskan credit decision-nya. Kemudian dari facial recognition underwriting ini, faktanya ternyata di daerah masih banyak masyarakat yang nggak punya KTP atau nggak punya KTP elektronik, di mana itu ketika datanya dicek, di match ke Dukcapil, jadi nggak ada datanya, yang akan menjadi layer pertama application nasabah itu ditolak. Jadi dengan facial recognition underwriting ini kita bisa pas atau kita bisa tetap memproses aplikasi-aplikasi nasabah yang mungkin secara data Dukcapilnya nggak cocok. Ada beberapa data yang nggak match atau mereka yang bahkan nggak punya KTP sama sekali. So ini tuh menjadi sangat powerful untuk masyarakat yang unbanked. Kemudian dari non-bureau data, banyak transaksi misalnya melalui e-commerce, melalui digital produk lainnya, itu mereka banyak startup yang mulai meng-offer gitu suatu model kepada bank di mana mereka meng-analyze dari seluruh data, abundant data ini, mereka membuat suatu model dan model itu bisa memberikan decision kalau nasabah ini bagus atau enggak performance-nya based on their activity di dalam platform mereka. Kalau kita bisa incorporate all of this abundant data yang ada dan kita bisa melakukan suatu inclusive credit acquisition atau credit underwriting, di mana masyarakat nggak lagi majority yang di grant credit adalah mereka yang punya pekerjaan tetap atau mereka yang sudah punya data historik kredit lainnya. So the bank, jadi produk-produk perbankan ini akan lebih inklusif buat seluruh masyarakat. gitu. And then ketika kita udah bisa menawarkan produk yang lebih inklusif dari segi underwriting-nya, mereka kan sudah bankable berarti. What is exciting next di the future of banking dan juga AI ini adalah menurut aku frictionless payment. Jadi pasti teman-teman ngerasain selama pandemi ini kita mulai nggak mau pegang uang cash, dan juga based on research dari Visa, kita tuh on average kita tuh bisa go cashless selama 9 hari, dan itu the days is keep growing karena kita bisa transaksi lewat QR, kita bisa transfer seminimum tanpa minimum amount, dan juga kita bisa transaksi lewat card. Nah, tapi di frictionless payment ini kita ngebahas mengenai kalau misalnya kita transaksi secara offline di merchant, kita kan masih harus gesek kartu, input PIN. Tapi mungkin sekarang kita udah ada suatu fitur contactless, tap and go. Sayangnya acceptance di Indonesia tuh masih sangat minim banget. Nah, yang di-offer di frictionless payment di future of banking itu dimana kita bisa melakukan pembayaran tanpa perlu bawa kartu, tanpa perlu input OTP, tanpa harus kesel di reject karena OTP yang nggak datang-datang. It's as simple as misalnya payment-nya through facial recognition atau smile, and then payment kita langsung berhasil. Kenapa ini bisa terjadi gitu in the future? Karena dukungan dari robust fraud monitoring juga. Jadi dari seluruh transaction monitoring system ini, dia akan punya abundant data, dan kemudian dia bisa analyze yang mana yang transaksi dengan pattern seperti apa yang tergolong sebagai fraud, yang mana yang tergolong sebagai genuine transaction. Dan dari situ mereka bisa dengan cepat memisahkan, dan kita bisa punya payment experience yang lebih seamless. Dan terakhir dari segi payment saat ini kan perbankan semua masih cukup kaku atau mirip ya. Kalau teman-teman punya beberapa digital bank account, produk-produk yang ditawarkan lumayan sama satu sama lain karena mereka lagi mendigitalisasi existing conventional feature gitu ya, masih susah. Tapi in the future mulai ada beberapa perbankan digital yang menawarkan personal financial management seperti budgeting, seperti expense tracker, and then aku rasa beberapa bank sudah mulai develop untuk budgeting tracker, di mana kita nggak perlu lagi punya dua app yang terpisah, banking and then we need to manually add expense kita ke app lainnya kan. Tapi what is exciting in the future itu di PFM, personal finance management, itu akan menjadi insightful. Dia bisa track abnormality dari transaction dari financial behavior kita. Dia bisa alert kita kalau transaksi kita atau budget kita udah melebihi dari yang kita inginkan, dan dia juga bisa kasih insight kayak you can misalnya decrease spending kamu di komponen atau di kategori apa. Dan ini adalah the future of banking gitu. Jadi banks itu bukan lagi perbankan gitu, bukan lagi tempat untuk menaruh uang, transfer, pinjam uang, tapi banks itu akan menjadi life finance kita. Dia akan menemani kita dalam kebutuhan financial kita beyond transactional atau beyond saving itu. Dan I think siapapun yang bisa start first, dia definitely akan menjadi one of the dark horse in this industry. Oke, that's all dari aku. Happy to connect dan can wait buat discuss dan menjawab pertanyaan-pertanyaan dari teman-teman.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Shani. So thank you again for the insight on the AI, the application of AI in current and also future banking, I think. Okay, so our last speaker, but not the least, of course, we have Mas Kiki, ya. So please, Mas Kiki, the time is yours. Thank you.
Screen-nya udah kelihatan belum ya? Sorry.
Sudah, Mas.
Udah, ya makasih. Okay. Hello, good evening everyone. I'm thrilled to be here virtually with you today. Thank you very much to the whole at America team, the US Embassy, via Pak Agni, and then everyone for inviting me. So my name is Malayaki Wijaya. and I'm the co-founder and founding engineer at Tannix. Today, I'm going to chat a bit about the field Explainable AI and the doctor for AI tools that we develop at Tannix in particular. A brief background about me. I did my bachelor's degree at the University of Melbourne in Australia. I specialize in mathematics and computer science. And after that, I did my master in AI at Imperial College London. And then subsequently a mini PhD or an MPhil, that's what they call, at the University of Cambridge. And in between my studies, I did an internship at with the Australian government at CSIRO, and also I did an internship with Professor Marcus Hatter from Google DeepMind at ANU. And after I graduated from the University of Cambridge, I co-founded Tannix with my co-founders, Boti and Dimitri. And then we went through this accelerator called Y Combinator on last June. And then since then, I was working full-time for Tannix. What is Tannix? So Tannix is a Y Combinator-backed University of Cambridge startup that is inventing the way humanity interacts with AI to protect the world from the Terminator. So essentially, we are building tools that can help machine learning developers to build more reliable algorithms faster. You can think of like such, you can think of Tannix platform as like debugger or like doctor for AI. And so it means we can diagnose like symptoms, and then we can understand the root causes of if there's like some failures with your AI model. And then we can also prescribe treatment for the AI model. Because of our 2 PhDs and 1 master thesis in Explainable AI from Cambridge, we sort of have the knowledge and then the know-how to know how to analyze the behavior of computer vision algorithms at like granular details. And recently, we have raised $3.4 million in seed funding from leading investors across the Europe, UK, and Bulgaria mostly. And then currently, we are building a strong MVP and is currently working on 6 pilots with AI companies across the world. So in the last decade, we have seen the rise of machine learning technology, and it has been used in various domains. For example, like it has been used in esports, explained by Alexander, and then it's been used in consulting, RPA, as explained by Rifki, and also like in digital banking as well. There's like a lot of potential for digital banking, as we have also heard from Shana. And apart from those, actually, we have also seen how increasingly complex AI models are trained to solve world's most difficult questions. For example, there is like this AlphaFold algorithm that is developed by Google DeepMind that can solve the protein folding problem, which is a 50 years old grand challenge in structural biology. Apart from that, there is also the Alphago, which is also developed by Google DeepMind as well, that can actually beat it's trained for the game of Go, and then it can beat the world champion of Go, Lee Sedol, by like 4-1. So on one hand, we have this like amazing complex AI model that can be applied to like lots and lots of applications, as we have seen previously. So we get like very high rewards, and then the AI can solve like the world's most difficult problems. But actually, there is like a dark side of AI, and actually, it's very risky to deploy like complex AI model to the real world. And the reason for this is because complex AI model is essentially a black box. So the term black box here is actually coined by like machine learning researchers and scientists to describe like the fact that complex machine learning model is impossible. I mean, we cannot really understand like why they're making a particular prediction. For example, I mean, you can imagine like a gigantic like neural network or deep learning models that has like quadrillion parameters, and then you train these models like for days, like with millions of data points. Then it would be impossible to, for example, like look through in detail like the layer on the model, and then to understand why it's making a particular prediction. So what really happened right now, it's like the model can make prediction, but simply we cannot really understand why it's making such prediction. And this is actually dangerous because the AI may actually learn the wrong signals, but they still make correct prediction on the training data. But when you deploy this on the real world data, because it learned the wrong signal, then it's making incorrect prediction. And even worse, sometimes you deploy this to like medical or like for finance, and then like all these business people or these doctors like just blindly trust the AI to make diagnosis or like to invest in like stocks. And to illustrate like the danger of this, let's go through this example. So imagine if you want, for example, to build like an AI model to distinguish between like cows and camels. And then so you collect like a bunch of like cow images, and also you collect a bunch of like camel images, and then you train this AI model. And when you test this on the test data, it has like very high accuracy. So it has like 90% accuracy. And now the question is then, should we trust this like 90% accuracy model when we deploy this in the real world? But and then you ask your machine learning engineers, and then you ask like, should we trust this AI model? And then of course, like the machine learning engineers will say like, sure, let's trust this AI model because it has like very high performance. Its accuracy is above 90%. But do you know what? Actually, the AI model is not trustworthy because the reason for this is the AI model is learning the wrong signal. So for example, when the AI model wants to predict like an image as a cow, it just looks at the background. If there's like a lot of like grass, or if there's like a lot of trees, a lot of green pastures on the image, then it will say that it's cow. But if there's like some yellow or like some sandy beaches on the background, then it will say it's a camel. So it's not really looking at the animal, but it's looking at the background to make prediction. And then when you evaluate this on your test data, like the accuracy is like very high. So for example, like in the real world data, they might encounter like this case, like cows on like some sandy beaches, and then you ask like this AI, is this like cow or camel? And then the AI will just simply look at like this like background, it's sandy beaches, so of course it's a camel. I'm confident 99%. So so this is like the danger of like blindly applying AI in the real world, because I mean, in order to be safe, you need to sort of understand like why the AI makes such prediction. So now, if we go straight to the big question, how can we diagnose this AI disease then, like this opaqueness, this black box? So the answer to that is actually using a new using methods from a new subfield of AI called the explainable AI. So basically, this field is like a new and emerging field in AI, and then it research and then learns of like various approaches for improving the understandability of machine learning systems. And there are in general like two types of explainable AI methods. The first one is called post-hoc method. So the idea of this is like, imagine you have like these complex AI models, for example, like the DeepMind Alphago or like the DeepMind AlphaFold model. So what you do is like you just apply external AI models on top of like the DeepMind model, and then and to explain like why it's making a particular prediction. So the idea here is like to apply external explainable AI approach. And the second approach is the interpretable by design approach. And the idea is like to not use the existing complex model, but rather you train a new model from scratch. For example, like instead of using like some crazy complex like deep learning or neural network models, what you do is like to just like do some linear regression or like logistic regression or like decision trees, just basically like some very simple model. Or there's also actually like another model called the concept-based model, if you still want to use like some flavor of like deep learning model. So because like one of the approach that I mentioned, like the post-hoc is like a heat map methods. Let me to understand better what a heat map is, let me start with an example to illustrate how we can construct these heat maps, and then what kind of information we can actually gain by looking at the heat maps to explain like the model prediction. Let's play a game. I give you an image, and then what you need to do is only to tell me like how confident you are that there's a cat in the image. So I give you the first image here, like the first image with the dog and cat, and then and then I ask you like how confident you are there's a cat in the image, and then of course you will say to me, hey Kiki, there's obviously a cat there. I'm 99% confident. Stop wasting my time, something like that. And then so now let's play another game. Now I create like some black rectangle and then put that on like part of the image, and then ask you again like how confident are you there's a cat in the image? And then I mean you will still say the same thing like, Kiki, stop wasting my time. Obviously there's a cat there. I'm still 99% confident. But what about now? If I move like the rectangle like to the cat's trunk. So now, I mean, you will say, sure. I mean, it seems there's a cat. There's like silhouette of cat, but I'm not like 99%. I'm now like 90% that confident that there is a cat. So like the idea of the heat map here to construct the heat map is I then need to log all your answers and then measure the biggest change in confidence. And the way I construct a heat map is like, for example, like the third image here, like the image spots like on the cat's trunk change like the confidence quite a lot. So you just draw it like with lighter color, and then whereas like for the other parts like with darker color. So here's an example of like the heat maps in general when applied to AI model. So the how to read like this heat maps is like the lighter colored heat map is I mean heat map shows us like where the AI model actually looks at when they're making prediction. So in this case, for example, like the CNN or like that's the AI model, when it predicts that there's a cat on this image, then it primarily looks at this region of the image. So that kind of explanation. So this kind of explanation provide us improve like the model explainability, and then improve like our trust with the model as well. So to conclude the presentation, let me give you one real world case study of how we use heat map at Tannix. So in the past, we had an X-ray data set for pneumonia detection, and then the machine learning task for this is like we need to determine, given an X-ray, whether the patient has pneumonia or not. So we train an AI model, like a CNN, like convolutional neural network model on it, and then we achieve like very good performance on the test data set. It's like 94% accuracy, so it's like very accurate model. And then after that, we want to know whether the model is trustworthy. So we load this model into a data set into our platform, into the Tannix platform, and then we run the heat map mode to see like the heat maps where the model looks at when making prediction. So how to read this heat map? The way to read this heat map is like the lighter color is the part that the model focuses on when making prediction. For example, in this case, the weird thing here is that the model actually focused on like the R symbol and also the metadata when it's making prediction rather than the lungs. So so what this means is the model is not trustworthy when they're making prediction. So we want to see whether if this is like a pattern or it's just like for this particular image. So what we do is like to run these heat maps on like all the other images, and then apparently we saw like consistent pattern of this, and so we talked with our client, and then the client talked to the hospitals, and then apparently the issue is actually different hospital do like the metadata. Do the metadata tagging in a different way, in different way. So and each hospital have different distribution of pneumonia patients. For example, the hospital A has like 0 pneumonia patient, whereas like hospital B might have like a lot of like pneumonia patient. And then so the idea here is like if the model can predict like which hospital, then it can sort of like predict like whether a patient has pneumonia with like high accuracy. So what happened right here is actually the model is making like correct prediction, but for the wrong reason. And so with this insight, then we ask the user to fix the data set so they can like just remove the metadata, like the R and then the top right metadata, and then they can re-upload that to our platform. And we saw like actually now like the new model focus on like the lungs, which is like what's expected. So like new model after using the Tannix platform is now safe to deploy it like in the real world. And actually, that's all of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Kiki. So again, thank you for all the presenter for all the presentation. Yeah. I perhaps just want to highlight a couple of things. So first, we have the presentation about how AI can be implemented or used in esport. And then we have the how AI can also be used in many sectors, but especially in robotic process, or robotic process automation. And then we also look at the possible implementation of AI in banking. And lastly, just now, Mas Kiki, I think it's more computer vision, I believe, Mas Kiki, yeah? So AI and computer vision. Okay, so perhaps we'll just jump to the look at the questions, yeah? We don't have question in the Zoom itself, but actually there are a couple of questions in the other channels. So let me read some of them, and nothing is specific for what specific presenter here, but that's perhaps one of the question that asked by several people about the relation between AI with machine learning. Perhaps who would like to address on that issue? What is the how machine learning relate with AI? I don't know, Mas Kiki atau Mas Rifki?
Oke, bisa dijawab ya. So jadi kayak apa namanya, AI in general itu sebenarnya kayak banyak scope-nya. Kayak misalnya RPA itu juga termasuk AI. Terus habis itu juga ada kayak misalnya actually kita pakai kalkulator aja itu kan kayak automate cara kita ngitung itu juga termasuk AI. Terus ada juga subfield AI lain kayak misalnya yang automation gitu lah ya, automation kayak misalnya di factory itu juga termasuk AI. Tapi kalau machine learning itu adalah kayak subfield of AI, jadi dia kayak area kecil dari AI, dan machine learning itu sendiri biasanya dipakai untuk kayak ada banyak data gitu, terus kita mau bikin suatu prediction, biasanya machine learning sih kayak gitu. Jadi untuk menjawab kayak relation-nya, AI itu kayak umbrella term-nya, machine learning itu kayak salah satu subfield di mana kita biasanya pakai big data, pakai data yang banyak untuk bikin suatu prediction, biasanya sih gitu.
Oke, thank you Mas Kiki. Mas Rifki atau Mbak Shana mungkin mau menambahkan on that question?
Aku setuju dengan apa yang Mas Kiki bilang. Tapi simpelnya lagi ya, AI tadi itu benar, AI ambil data, tapi kalau machine learning dibandingkan dengan yang lain, datanya itu dia juga gather data buat dia algoritmanya semakin berkembang ya. Dia kayak menuju neural network ya, mungkin ya, bisa bilang gitu ya. Tapi kalau tadi kayak RPA, ya itu kan logiknya udah fix sesuai dengan bisnis prosesnya. Nah, kalau machine learning itu dikasih suatu data, dia bisa predict atau bisa menghasilkan sesuatu dari data tersebut. Itu paling yang bisa aku tambahin sih, Pak.
Gimana? Go ahead. Sorry, my internet a bit lagi. Gimana?
Long story short, Pak. Sesuai dengan apa yang Mas Kiki bilang tadi.
Oke, siap. Siap. Ya, kalau secara akademis, mungkin saya dari sisi akademis ya memang kalau kita belajar ML tuh machine learning memang itu subset dari AI sih. Biasanya kita belajar dulu AI-nya in general, baru kemudian yang spesifik kita baru belajar machine learning as part of AI sih. Oke, kita lanjut ya. Kita ada pertanyaan lagi nih. Ini mungkin sedikit Mas Kiki lagi nih, karena tadi ngomong soal Terminator nih. Apakah teknologi AI benar-benar bisa menggantikan skill manusia? Dan kemudian juga relate-nya mungkin dengan ethical issue-nya mungkin. Apakah ada ethical issue dengan hal tersebut, AI menggantikan manusia?
Ini kayaknya lumayan.
Kan ada istilah Terminator tadi kan.
Terminator ini lumayan relate ke Mas Rifki kayaknya, mungkin tentang RPA mungkin. Mas Rifki mungkin mau jawab.
Silakan. Boleh silakan. siapa aja. Ntar juga Mbak Syana bisa jawab, ntar jangan-jangan caller udah nggak ada lagi kan sekarang udah banyak ganti cabang, semua pakai aplikasi. Silakan, siapa yang mau mulai?
Jadi mungkin kalau aku skopnya lebih ke bisnis ya, karena emang RPA itu kan diimplementnya buat bisnis, bukan buat kayak personal issue gitu. Kayak ngapain juga kita ngerjain PR pakai RPA gitu, kayak kurang make sense juga, kurang masuk gitu. Tapi kalau kita bahas pakai secara robotik ya berarti ya, dia tujuannya itu bukan mereplace orang, tapi mereplace pekerjaannya yang repetitif, yang dari kita masuk jam 9 sampai jam 5 kerjanya input data aja. Nah, RPA di sini dia menghilangkan hal tersebut supaya orangnya itu bisa tadi mengawasi, memvalidasi, dan juga mengefisiensikan pekerjaannya. Jadi misalnya kamu punya data 1000 gitu, dalam satu hari ada 1000 transaction data, daripada diproses 1000, kita serahin ke RPA, kita nanti misalnya RPA-nya selain dia membuat si resipnya atau membuat output-nya, dia juga misalnya masukin ke suatu dashboard, misalnya Power BI dashboard gitu ya. Nah, kita tinggal baca aja tuh dari analytics ya. Oh, ada 1000 transaksi, revenue yang kita gain hari ini segini. Jadi udah nggak perlu lagi untuk nge-inputnya. Jadi yang kita hilangkan adalah pekerja repetitif task-nya di situ. Menjadi suatu bentuk yang lebih simple dan lebih mudah untuk divalidasi dan juga dianalisis.
Saya mungkin tambahin dikit kali ya dari sisi machine learning lah ya. Jadi sebenarnya di salah satu bidang di AI itu kita ada namanya human in the loop. Itu salah satu kayak paradigm di dunia AI, di mana kayak AI itu actually jangan replace manusia, tapi AI itu harus kayak augment manusia. Dan actually ini sering banget ada paper kayak dari 2020, 2021 tentang kayak ini. Idenya itu kayak misalnya tadi medical imaging problem tadi. Jadi kita dikasih X-ray terus untuk prediksi kayak pneumonia atau enggak. Jadi AI-nya itu pakai machine learning, dia bikin kayak suatu prediction terus ngasih tahu alasan kenapa dia bikin prediction sehingga dokternya bisa apply kayak medical knowledge dia untuk ngecek apakah AI-nya ini sebenarnya masuk akal nggak sih gitu. Jadi untuk kayak augment the human gitu, bukan replace kebanyakan.
Oke. Thank you Mas Kiki.
Mungkin aku mau nambahin. Sorry suaranya agak lagging ya on my side, internetnya agak unstable. Tapi aku pengen nambahin dari perspektif mungkin real world-nya ya di perbankan itu dampak dari AI dan even digitalisasi simple kayak perbankan konvensional ditransform jadi perbankan digital itu udah banyak banget perubahannya. Kayak kalau teman-teman mungkin iseng bisa ngelihat di OJK itu tiap bulan mereka punya report number of ATM, number of branches di Indonesia itu semua se-Indonesia dari seluruh bank yang ada ya. Itu tuh numbernya terus turun karena sekarang bank nggak ngelihat kalau investment di physical office dan juga sumber daya manusia yang sangat banyak dan besar itu tuh nggak memberikan return on investment yang sama sesuai dengan investasi yang dilakukan melalui teknologi dan juga AI. Jadi, of course in the future menurut aku ada beberapa pekerjaan yang mungkin low skill yang akan kedepannya terreplace fully oleh teknologi dan AI.
Oke. Thank you speaker untuk semuanya, untuk insight-nya. Oke, kita lanjut ya, masih ada beberapa pertanyaan nih. Ini kita lihat yang di chat di Zoom juga ada nih baru beberapa. Tapi ini mungkin lebih cocok mungkin komite boleh bantu forward ke Dr. Champlin tadi ya, karena ini yang question about should Southeast Asian esport be focused on PC in the future. Ini mungkin perhaps Dr. Alexander yang lebih tahu information-nya ya, mungkin bisa di forward ke emailnya Dr. Alexander. Tapi satu nih yang di atasnya yang saya interested ya, dari Gilang, asking, hello speaker, is there someone among the speaker that actually don't have a strong academic background in AI? If yes, do you have some advice for people that actually interested in AI but do not have the academic AI background? And where to start and what to do? Mungkin boleh dibantu? Speaker, silakan.
Mungkin dari my side ya, aku background-nya itu bukan di IT or AI sector lah. Aku background-nya itu di business entrepreneurship. Jadi tapi I work in digital bank gitu kan, as a PM product manager. Jadi memang karena kalau ngomongin soal produk sekarang tuh nggak ada yang masih konvensional. We definitely talk about technology a lot ya, tapi memang I think struggle pertama-tama itu gimana buat paham teknologi ini bisa mengubah atau bisa memberikan dampak gitu. Tapi yang paling kalau boleh kasih tips, I think pertama itu always learn ya, kayak cari tahu di luar sana tuh terjadi apa gitu. Nah dari situ kita bisa ngelihat dari informasi itu kita bisa mulai crafting ke produk yang akan kita buat. Kemudian secondly find partners dan juga mentors atau peers yang punya background di IT. Jadi we can exchange one another gitu buat insight, karena ini yang aku rasain di environment working aku, kita bisa kasih perspektif dari background kita, misalnya aku as business or entrepreneurship side, dan others bisa kasih insight from the technology side. Jadi we work together really well kalau misalnya kita bisa dapetin partners yang bisa saling belajar satu sama lain.
Thank you, Mbak Sana. Kalau saya sama Mas Kiki kayaknya sama-sama computer science nih. Mas Rifki mungkin boleh ada, saya nggak tahu Mas Rifki backgroundnya apa Mas Rifki?
Saya dari teknik electrical engineering.
Oh ini,
jadi masih
sama aja mirip-mirip ya.
Masih di STEM juga, tapi ya mungkin dari engineering agak beda ya kayak misalkan orang CS atau apa sih kalau bahasa kita, kalau bahasa di sana
informatika, ilmu komputer.
Informatika. Nah, kalau di saya sendiri sebenarnya pas kuliah tuh tracknya IoT. Jadi nggak terlalu jauh sebenarnya sama AI, karena IoT kan juga 50% di front end-nya terutama itu kan analytics. Jadi ya nggak terlalu jauh juga. Tapi kalau dari saya sih terutama dari sisi developer ya, bukan dari sisi bisnis. Karena kedepannya saya yakin semua lini bisnis itu bakal pakai AI ataupun pakai machine learning ataupun dia bakal interact sama suatu teknologi lah, digitalize ya. Itu harus. Tapi kalau dari saya sendiri, dari sisi developer atau engineer atau ya apapun itu, minimal tahu if, else, while dan teman-temannya. Jadi kayak basic logics of coding itu harus ada, karena semuanya base dari situ. Mau kita bikin itu prediction atau analytics atau hanya RPA, logiknya udah fix dan it's fokus dari loop, dari decision making, itu kita harus punya di situ. Jadi ya mungkin kalau engineering saya paham menyolder gitu ya, jadi harus bisa mengarah ke sana bagaimana kita thinking prosesnya itu yang awalnya bisnis menjadi logic minded gitu, kalau mungkin boleh bilang kayak gitu ya.
Oke, thank you Mas Rifki. On that note nih sekalian mungkin Mas Rifki lagi nih, soalnya pertanyaan soal tadi robot ya, ngomong IoT juga tadi robot RPA. Is there any difference between AI and robot?
Nah, kalau kita bahas robot ada dua jenis nih, yang virtual yang itu RPA, ada juga yang robot beneran fisik ya. Nah itu bedanya sangat jauh tentunya. Karena tadi kalau saya bilang RPA itu dia mimik atau melakukan, sama si robot biasa juga mimik, tapi maksudnya dia melakukan pada suatu sistem digital. Misalnya tadi kayak ada input, kita proses jadi suatu output. Tapi kalau robot fisikal itu kan dia berinteraksi dengan suatu benda gitu. Nah bendanya itu kan parameternya bisa banyak. Misalnya bisa kotak kecil, kotak besar, kotak sedang, bisa juga tujuannya ke A, B, C, D, nah bisa banyak. Kalau RPA itu mungkin logiknya lebih sedikit. Tapi kalau kita lebih wide lagi, apa itu bedanya robot sama AI? Bedanya adalah AI itu logiknya, bisa aku bilang, mungkin Mas Kiki bisa bantu juga ya, logiknya itu nggak fix gitu. Nggak kayak, misalnya tadi Mas Kiki ada gambar paru-paru ya, nah itu dia, ya paru-parunya bisa macam-macam. Orang kan nggak banyak, jenisnya juga ukurannya beda-beda gitu ya. Parameternya itu nggak fix. Tapi kalau robot, parameter udah fix. Dia satu tujuan, that's it. Tapi mungkin kalau kita bahas AI yang selain robot, itu lebih luas lagi bahasanya. Mungkin Mas Kiki atau Mbak Syada bisa bantuin juga, karena implementasiku kan cukup bisnis ya.
Ya, cukup setuju sih dengan kayak explanation-nya Kak Rifki untuk kayak perbedaan AI dengan robot. Jadi in general kalau misalnya kayak RPA gitu yang atau robot-robot mungkin yang kita sering pakai term robot itu biasanya kayak lebih ke automation gitu. Jadi ada kayak set of instruction yang repetitif dan robotnya kita suruh melakukan itu aja gitu. Jadi dia nggak perlu kayak mikir gitu lah. Kita cuma pokoknya habis ke A ya ke B, terus habis ke B ke A, kalau ada kotor di lantai misalnya ya disapu kayak gitulah, repetitif. Tapi kalau di AI sendiri ada banyak macamnya, misalnya ada machine learning, terus habis itu ada reinforcement learning. Ini mungkin lebih cocok sama reinforcement learning yang kayak misalnya AI-nya main catur gitu, atau enggak misalnya main Game of Go itu kayak, atau enggak main Dota deh, misalnya AI-nya main Dota gitu ya. Itu kayak AI-nya itu dia kayak belajar dari data gitu, belajar dari experience. Jadi cara belajar ini ada namanya AI reinforcement learning. Jadi cara kerjanya itu pertamanya AI-nya itu bakal dia random gerakannya, bakal AI-nya gerakannya ngasal. Terus AI-nya kita suruh misalnya main Dota ya, AI-nya kita suruh misalnya main tembak-tembakan nih. Misalnya AI-nya berhasil nembak musuh nih, AI-nya berhasil nembak musuh, kita kasih AI-nya kayak reward gitu. Kita kasih reward karena dia berhasil membunuh musuh gitu kan. Terus kalau misalnya AI-nya mati, kita kasih penalty gitu. Terus habis itu di AI-nya ini ada suatu kayak function matematika di mana kayak over time kita pengen AI-nya maximize function ini dengan reward sama penalty-nya gitu. Jadi makin lama AI-nya semakin banyak experience, semakin pintar gitu. Jadi ini yang AI pakai mikir gitu. Kalau AI biasanya kayak gitu sih sama AI. Ini reinforcement learning namanya kalau penasaran.
Thank you untuk penjelasannya. Oke, kita masih ada beberapa pertanyaannya, kita bisa lanjut ya. Misconception. What do you think? Is there any misconception about AI yang mungkin masyarakat umum salah paham atau salah memahami tentang AI? What do you think? Generic ya nih, in any area. Saya pikir sih cukup banyak juga sih misconception tentang AI ini. What do you think? Silakan. Mungkin dari Mbak Sana lagi mungkin kita bisa satu-satu. Misconception AI in our community. Mungkin Indonesia specifically ya.
Mungkin nanti juga bisa ditambahin dari Kak Rifki dan Kak Kiki yang lebih expert nih di bidang AI ya. Tapi kalau dari perspektif aku, mungkin banyak yang lihat kalau AI itu harus sesuatu yang benar-benar kayak superficial gitu kan. Benar-benar yang kayak wow. Tapi AI itu kayak can start from small thing gitu, dari hal-hal kecil. Kayak misalnya a set of data, menurut aku ya, a set of data, kayak misalnya tadi di underwriting proses, kita cuma pikir, kita cuma punya simple data aja nih, behavior, misalnya orang beli apa, segala macam. Nah, tapi sebenarnya with the help of machine learning, AI itu tuh bisa dianalyze menjadi sesuatu yang powerful, dan menjadi insight. Even tadi kita lihat gimana data-data non-gurau dari transaksi e-commerce kita itu bisa ngebantu buat mendigitalisasi atau membawa financial access lebih dekat ke masyarakat.
Oke. Silakan mungkin ditambahkan Mas Kiki atau Mas Rifki, misconception about AI.
Tadi mungkin yang ini ya, yang tentang mungkin orang mikir kayak AI ini udah pintar banget atau segala macam gitu kan, kayak udah Terminator, ini udah kayak Terminator. Tapi itu namanya AGI sih, Artificial General Intelligence. Jadi kayak suatu AI yang kayak bisa melakukan semuanya lah. Basically sepintar apapun itu gitu lah, sepintar manusia. Dia bisa bikin decision, bisa melakukan, bisa jadi dokter, bisa jadi apa gitu lah. Tapi sebenarnya untuk stage saat ini AI belum secanggih itu gitu. Jadi AI itu masih sampai stage di mana ANI namanya, Artificial Narrow Intelligence, di mana AI itu kita latih untuk melakukan suatu hal kecil, satu hal doang gitu, nggak kayak manusia bisa semua, nggak kayak Terminator. Contohnya misalnya Google DeepMind tadi itu udah kayak pintar banget AI-nya, dia cuma bisa melakukan satu hal, yaitu main Go, atau nggak main catur, atau nggak main Dota, jadi cuma hal-hal kecil, jadi belum sampai se-Terminator gitu sih. Itu salah satu misconception.
Oke. Mas Rifki mungkin mau menambahkan?
Ya, udah cukup ke cover semua sih. Cuma mungkin aku bisa bahas dari sisi AI itu punya juga minusnya gitu. Dia pertama tadi bener harus kita ajarin dulu, nggak bisa tiba-tiba langsung jago gitu. Terus juga kemungkinan dia untuk error itu juga pasti ada. Seluruh sistem itu pasti ada flow-nya, mau itu satu atau dua gitu. Misalnya contoh aja kayak punya Mas Kiki tadi, ada huruf R, dia bacaannya false positif ya kita bilangnya ya. Tapi aslinya kalau R dihilangin itu udah bisa bener-bener aja gitu. Jadi hal-hal sekecil itulah yang makanya AI itu harus terus belajar. Jadi ya misalnya kalian dengar berita kayak AI ini tiba-tiba ngapain gitu, itu belum tentu benar juga tuh. Mungkin cuma pasti kita ngetes dalam suatu environment test ya, nggak mungkin tiba-tiba belum 100% jadi dilepas gitu. Jadi ya itu mungkin aja beritanya bener, tapi nggak mungkin langsung nyampe ke kalian.
Oke, thank you all presenters. Kita udah jam 8 ya. Jadi mungkin saya akan request masing-masing presenter untuk memberikan sedikit closing remark aja sih. Kita bisa mulai dengan urutan aja tadi. Mungkin pertama tadi kan Mas Rifki, mungkin ada closing remark sebagai penutup. Silakan.
Simple aja. Soon atau ya in a while kita semua bakal hidup berdampingan dengan si teknologi ini, mau itu AI, ML, robotics, apapun itu. Contoh aja di Grand Indonesia kan udah ada robot kopi tuh, punyanya Family Mart ya. Kita bakal berdampingan dengan hal semua itu. Dan itu secara bisnis, aku bisa bilang bahwa itu akan sampai ke kalian pada akhirnya, terutama kalian yang masih di lini kerja. Dan yang bisa kita lakukan adalah belajar bagaimana cara mereka bekerja, cara treat mereka, dan menerima mereka, dan bekerja berdampingan dengan mereka. Jadi itu yang harus di-expect, dan itu kita harus ready juga, karena tujuannya ada 3 dalam implementasi teknologi, yaitu efficiency, effectivity, dan juga validity. Dan aku yakin banget, itu bakal sangat membantu kita ke depannya. So, don't be afraid of teknologi, tapi embrace kali ya, aku bisa bilang ya.
Ya, thank you. Mas. Silakan lanjut, Mbak Sana, silakan for closing remarks.
Ya, sebenarnya aku mirip kayak Kak Rifki ya, buat closing remarks-nya. Menurut aku, the futures buat banking, buat semua industri itu menarik banget nih ke depannya. Kita akan benar-benar punya pengalaman customer experience yang seamless dan semakin memudahkan. Nah, tapi jangan sampai kita terlena ya istilahnya. Kita harus tetap kayak at least kita tahu nih apa yang sudah berkembang, we upgrade our skills. Karena kalau enggak, at some point, the truth itu kita akan terreplace at one point ya kalau kita nggak ikut berkembang dengan teknologi itu. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Sana. And last, Mas Kiki, silakan closing remarks-nya.
Kalau dari saya mirip dengan Kak Rifki dan juga Kak Siana. Jadi intinya AI memang bakal terjadi gitu, dan actually mungkin di Europe sama UK in general udah ya banyak banget dipakai di mana-mana. Jadi yang bisa kita lakukan ya untuk adaptasi aja, untuk kayak embrace bahwa itu ada, dan actually kita berusaha gimana caranya kita belajar suatu skill yang AI nggak bisa, atau gimana kita belajar suatu skill yang komplement ke AI gitu. Yang penting untuk terus belajar sih. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you. So, luar biasa. Again, round of applause for all our speakers today. Thank you, everyone. Mungkin saya ya berarti menyimpulkan saja. Let's all embrace AI ya, berarti kalau gitu ya. Okay. Thank you. Back to MC Mbak Hasna. Silakan. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all speakers along with our moderator for today's virtual session. There are so many reasons for us to be excited for the future of AI. So earlier in this event, we asked the audience a question, and the question was, what was the first artificial intelligence program? And the correct answer to that is C, logic theories. Before 1949, computers lacked a key prerequisite for intelligence. They couldn't store commands, only execute them. 5 years later, the proof of concept was initialized through logic theories, a program designed to mimic the problem-solving skills of a human. Shout out to today's lucky one at Anton Junet from Instagram for answering correctly. Thank you so much to everyone who has participated in our question of the day. Don't forget to tune in next time and catch a chance to get a live shout-out from us. And now, do you want to develop more brilliant ideas with a platform like this? It's easy as ABC. You can simply go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, select create an event, and go to collaborate with us. All given proposals will be reviewed and an event must be featured soon. You can also subscribe to our newsletter if you find yourself enjoying this event so you can stay updated with our upcoming events. Follow us on our social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at AT America for interesting content, giveaways, and so much more. Also, please click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. With that, it is time to say farewell. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Hasna. See you at the next At America event. Bye bye, everybody.